But first, I'd like to discuss the recent controversy over the cartoon criticizing Islam with noted critic of Islam, Ibn Warraq, author of Why I'm Not a Muslim. Welcome to Point of Inquiry.
Thank you.
Recently, there are these conflagrations around the world, riots and protests that have led to embassies being stormed and even deaths, all over cartoons. Cartoons that ran in the Danish press depicting Mohammed, criticizing Islam for being a violent religion. What do you think about all of this?
First of all, let me just make a kind of academic remark concerning whether representation is allowed in Islam or not. It really isn't just a question of representation in Islam. There are conflicting and contradictory traditions within Islam. There's nothing in the Koran, for example, against the depiction of humans. There are several hadith, that's to say, traditions, which recount the acts and deeds of the Prophet, which are often interpreted as being interdictions on the reproduction of humans, because they are supposed to compete with God. It is only God who has the creative function. But these traditions are contradicted by accounts in works of Islamic history. In fact, the earliest biography of the Prophet, which predates any of these hadith, tells the story of how Muhammad, the Prophet, entered Mecca, asked the destruction of idols and pictures which were found in the Kaaba, which is the central point of the pilgrimage, to be destroyed except for two portraits, one of Jesus and the other one of Mary. He asked them to be preserved. Right from the beginning, in Islamic civilization, you've had representations even of the Prophet. So there are literally hundreds of miniatures. These miniatures, in fact, are one of the glories of Islamic art, show the Prophet, including the face of the Prophet. There are even rare illustrations to the Quran which depict the Prophet with his face clearly shown.
Is the main grievance of the Muslim protesters that the face or image of the Prophet was shown, or that the Prophet was ridiculed and dishonored in the cartoon?
With the Salman Rushdie affair, many Muslims were taken to the streets without having read a single word of the book, Satanic Verses by Rushdie. And this is similarly the case with these cartoons. Many of the people in the lynch mob took to the streets and had never seen any of the cartoons. But just the very idea, they were told, there was a rumor that the Prophet in some way had been mocked, had been ridiculed, had been satirized. And that was enough to get the mobs going, the fanaticism going, being whipped up. I think it's just quite depressing, but in many of the governments in the Islamic countries have not asked the people to calm down. In fact, the Iranian government has encouraged violence, wants the death penalty for the cartoonists. And of course, the other thing is this sheer hypocrisy of the governments in the Middle East, because they, on a daily basis, publish cartoons of Jews, which are the most horrific kind. But philosophically, of course, I'm not saying that if the Muslims stop drawing cartoons of Jews and so on, then we should stop our traditions either. No, this is a perfectly legitimate right. The Danish cartoonists, first of all, were acting within Danish law. They were exercising their freedom of the press, freedom to criticize religion, and is absolutely fundamental right. It's a fundamental principle of human rights, of democracy, of secularism. We have this right to criticize, to mock, to satirize, to prick the pretensions of politicians, to rage against tyranny. Satire has a very long tradition in the West, from Aristophanes, Quintilian, Petronius, Lucian, Lucilius onwards to the modern period. The French have a very long tradition of anti-clerical humor. And then in recent years, we had the American Andres Serrano photographed the Piss Christ, which provoked Christians didn't like it, but there was nothing like the kind of reaction we've had to these cartoons.
Do you think it's ironic that Muslims in their rioting are rioting the charge that Islam is a violent religion?
Exactly. They don't see the irony. I don't think they have a sense of humor by all accounts. There was a man holding up a picture in one of these demonstrations, a placard saying, "Behead all those who say Islam is a violent religion." Whether he was being
he was being serious, not making a joke.
I don't know. You never know. I'm not sure that they understand irony or self-deprecation of that kind.
Thank you, Ibn Warraq, for being on Point of Inquiry.
Okay, thanks a lot.